Welcome to Intimacy and Imitation, a limited podcast series dedicated to prying beneath our protective deceptions in pursuit of genuine connection. As the new year drapes its hope and exhaust across the city, tall buildings recede, concrete and glass withdrawing behind a smudged-out sky. Iced sidewalks stage angled commuters, heads down, protecting their exposed features from hungry shards of wind. Puffs of slow-rising gasoline carry that familiar, earth-toned scent. The clamor of metal overtakes a dampened chorus of human voices. In such moments, do you see loneliness or solitude? Peace or isolation? How does one define the difference? In this episode, we will explore these questions and attempt to create paths of meaning from the insights they reveal. Before we begin, here is an epigraph from The Lonely City by Olivia Lying. What does it feel like to be lonely? It feels like being hungry when everyone around you is readying for a feast. It is a profound realization to crash upon, that the feeling of being alone and actually being alone are not stitched together, but instead, like a zipper, are separate experiences tracked side by side. Their teeth may temporarily align, but just as easily pull apart. Can you tell me, how old were you when you first threw a shoulder against the wall of your difference? And where were you when your body absorbed the initial blow of Adenic consciousness? Cognizance of the fact that no matter how carefully we craft our stories, certain experiences are fettered to our sternums, incapable of translating into the language of even our beloved. That there are histories within each of us that will remain ours and ours alone. Through the biting of this fruit, we begin to uncover our inherent separation. As famous for his literary genius as his off-page behavior, David Foster Wallace suggested that the purpose of art is to make people feel less alone.
Reading requires sitting alone by yourself in a quiet room, and it seems significant that we don't want things to be quiet ever anymore. And to me, I don't know that I could defend it, but that seems to me to have something to do with when you feel like the purpose of your life is to gratify yourself and get things for yourself and go all the time. There's this other part of you that is almost hungry for silence and quiet and thinking really hard about the same thing for maybe half an hour instead of 30 seconds that doesn't get fed.
While I am no longer young enough to co-sign such idealism wholeheartedly, creative work can introduce us to ideas we would not otherwise entertain. Through the illusion of craft, we are lulled into trust. Within this space, we are amenable to what we do not or pretend we do not know. A crack, slivering light upon the parts of us that still know right from wrong. The parts we bury in favor of reflexively refuting whatever refuses to fit into our pre-held narratives. A creation that has filled this role for me, gesticulating in synapses, prodding questions of the soul, is The Master of Go, a 1954 novel by Japanese Nobel Prize winner Yasunari Kawabata. Kawabata wrote stories with the attentiveness of a poet. In brevity, he fashioned stark descriptions that congregated multitudes. Don't you suppose he was lonely? Yes, but he was always lonely. He was always lonely, as if to say he was born lonely. As if to say that whatever happened during life offered little reprieve from this intrinsic state of being. As if to say a certain strain of loneliness is palpable, regardless of the camouflage personality can don. It exudes from the spirit, visible to all, no matter how well it is thought to be concealed. Kawabata, acclaimed and respected, died from gas inhalation at the age of 72. At 46, Foster Wallace hanged himself. Both authors, who so eloquently explored the depths of universal disconnect, chose to tear their own holes to exit life through. At the risk of exposing my fallible optimism, I do my best to think of their decision as that of voyagers, setting out in search of greater answers than the cardboard ones available here. Yes, I am aware that this is a grown-up version of "they went to the farm," but if you have ever been this kind of lonely, I trust you will understand. For like them, I have taut each muscle behind an atlatl and aimed toward a mute sky, praying to pierce any flesh, to drag an answer down into my hands, all the while knowing I will miss. There isn't anything but air to puncture, the spearhead plummeting home to dirt. There are reasons I am drawn to endings that can be seen from the starting line. Hold in your mind the image of a noose. Walk around its languid sway. Run your hand across the golden splinters jutting out like arm hair. Follow its Escher-like braid to the root in the ceiling, and consider, in reality, how startling it is. Doctors jerked with forceps, bruising my body as I cried into existence, the umbilical cord coiled around my neck. In the earliest photographs, I appear almost alien, skin purpled, rings of Saturn framing a bruise, eyes swollen, an inchworm crowned with crumpled islands of black hair. At times, I have believed my loneliness to have materialized in this moment, drawing its first hit of oxygen alongside my earthly self. If I had been delivered centuries before, I would likely not have survived. But by the metronome of hospital beeps, my spirit was given life, bewildered in its misalignment of form. There is a poem by Gregory Orr that speaks on this. I want to go back to the beginning. We all do. I think hurt won't be there. But I'm wrong. Where the water bubbles up at the spring, isn't that a wound? In clinical language, turmoil like this can be collated into the condition of complex post-traumatic stress disorder. At its core, CPTSD is a conviction that one is damaged, cut apart, utterly and fundamentally alone. Principally, this self-punishing thesis is chiseled in childhood, an inheritance of all that has eluded healing through generations. For many, the heirloom is passed on so early that there is no before to compare with. There is only what has always been. When anything is set as an initial precedent, it can be nearly impossible to disprove, to sift lies from truth, to tumble the oppressing Jericho of deceptions and dig through the rubble of how different life could have been. If only the mother stopped the uncle. If only the father had known softness. If only who we are could have been somebody else. It is astounding how deep these wounds go. Bell Hook's thought arises here that rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. Yet, sadness surfaces in tandem, for rarely, if ever, do our hurts stem solely from isolation. Loneliness is a symptom that perpetuates further pain, but it is not an independent state. Loneliness is a middle, not a beginning.
I am a jealous God, punishing children for the inequity of parents to the third and fourth generation.
Deuteronomy 5:9.
The sins of the father are to be laid upon the children.
The Merchant of Venice, William Shakespeare.
But till then, no, daddy, don't be surprised if I want to see the tears in your eyes.
Dinner at 8.
Rufus Wainwright.
Due to lineages like this, the feathered platitude of love yourself can be damaging, even weaponized. If you have never passionately hated all that you are, never placed your skin in intentional danger with a prayer of retribution, never tiptoed to the edge for atonement of the universal injustice of your existence, then you do not understand. And despite my hunger to be understood, I am glad if you don't. Therapy and its modalities are important in developing awareness and tools that lead to healthier decisions. I am a disciple of their use. Still, the slippery distance between brain and heart must be traversed, and this province is treacherous. It is here, in the in-between, where art can offer itself, joining us where psychology and even companionship cannot. Silverjew's frontman, David Berman, penned the lyric, "Repair is the dream of the broken thing. All my favorite singers couldn't sing." And that is who I am forever in pursuit of, a comrade, a testifier, someone who says, yes, I am like you, and I have survived to tell the tale. It's Otis pleading, each bent note on its knees. This loneliness won't leave me alone. It's Nina reinventing Bernstein, twisting out. Can I be the only one who thinks these mysterious thoughts? It's Justin Townes Earl, rolling down the windows and wondering, sometimes I dream that I have found a place where I won't feel so all alone. Am I that lonely tonight? I don't know. There are no new feelings. In Icelandic writer Halldór Laxness's seminal 1935 novel, Independent People, the protagonist finds himself trapped in a blizzard, scouring haunted lands for a lost sheep. As the elements berate his body, he is lured by a voice encouraging him to rest his eyes. Through the foggy state between sleep and consciousness, he jolts awake, recognizing these words to be not his own, but those of an evil spirit calmly leading him to death. The image returns to me often as a parable of the immense power of our pasts, the wombs of loss we call home, how potent their elixirs, how enticing their scents, and how often these solicitations succeed, despite us knowing the empty we will be swallowed by upon entering. In my regressions, what troubles me most is how there is a kind of pleasure in the pain, and a strange comfort in the shame that follows. Something within me continually beckons.
Come home to the bottom. This is where you belong.
And through violence and fear, it tacks up a convincing, albeit warped, simulacrum of safety. This experience is not unique, but a known and researched phenomenon. During the come down of an emotional outburst, the brain itself releases opioids, soothing the body with a sense of warmth and security, a neurological explanation for the repetition compulsion, the ways hurting people continually return to the familiar evil they are trying to leave behind. It is not the lashing we wish upon ourselves, but the chemical hug that follows. When the pull towards the brink pays its monthly visit, when it coos melodies of nostalgia and revisionistic fairy tale, I remind myself that though each piece of evidence my mind concocts supports the charges, I am not alone. Like a single tree in a barren field, seed, wind, water, and sun all collaborate in the creation and continuation of being. Nothing that exists does so in complete isolation. Of course, interrelationality is dual. In the West, the onus of healing has been placed solely upon the individual. One will get better if one does the work, that A plus B will equal C. While there is a certain amount of positive agency offered in this outlook, the ideology is sermonized from a partial vantage point, one that completely ignores the capitalist commandment of function and its invasion of every facet of existence. Welcome to the entrepreneur era, where we have been sold that we can all win if we grind hard enough. Loneliness in this universe is seen as admirable. If seclusion serves as fuel for the launching of a business, a purchase that incurs property taxes, and the creation of a heteronormative family, it is character building. When this is not the outcome, the individual is held responsible for their inability to convert raw energy into an acceptable life. It is a failing of the singular person. Solitude has been dressed as a building block for self-development. We must dopamine detox, cold plunge, journal, disinfect ourselves of red flags, and stare at a wall until enlightenment arrives. Through the teachings of million subscriber channels, we can manifest the universe, force it to bend to our will, and finally be worthy of the love we crave. Invent the disease, sell the cure.
How you encounter it. That's an objectivist
If I
perspective.
feel a certain way, it is your job to fix it. They'll
Situations
do it
where
subconsciously.
And then to implement those algorithms and that circuitry for the rest.
You need to drop everything that you're doing
The brain
and
can
come and
change
love.
in adulthood, and it can change provided that there's an emphasis on
Responsible for
some
your feelings as
perceptual
much as possible.
event. So in other words,
What such oversimplification of mental and spiritual health crops out is that self-help section solitude is a choice, enacted within limitations as a means to foster a projected result. While we should all learn to be alone with ourselves, a room with an unlocked door is wildly different from a cell without a key. Our North American ears hate to hear it, but many work hard, harder than you or me, and still fail. Birthplace, genetics, inherited wealth, connections. We are all, to some extent, playing the lottery. When failure is seen as a completely personal shortcoming, rejection breeds a shrinking of self-esteem. How much harder is it to get back up when you are continually kissing the ground, spitting blood from your mouth? Self-responsibility has been fertilized and overgrown. If our unhappiness is our fault, we can spend money to fix it. Conveniently, this commodified model overlooks that mental stability is nearly impossible to maintain without financial stability. Though love don't cost a thing, it kind of does. Real-world dollars are required to spend time with people, especially in cities. If you fall behind the income level of your peers or work hours that might as well have you in different time zones, your communal life will suffer. This perceived incapability to achieve self-sufficiency within an unequal system further ostracizes the lonely, exacerbating feelings of inadequacy and making the already daunting task of attempting to connect rife with increasing risk. If I sound hyperbolic, simply glance at the language we use to describe personal relationships. They aren't worth the investment. They aren't providing value. They are keeping me from getting to the next level. This marketplace bleed over couldn't be more obvious. A common phrase for a newly single person is literally back on the market. While none of us are owed help and compassion, especially if we are difficult to be around, it is also true that our modern pursuit of pleasure justifies the ideal of community being discarded whenever it turns inconvenient. We leave people behind for the same reason our eyes erase the unhoused as we stroll into shops, artesian Americanos in hand. We don't want to look at situations that could easily befall us under only slightly different circumstances. Distilled to its essence, the ultimate pain of loneliness is that a person is unwanted, unneeded, inconsequential. Though all will have a taste, a certain temperament is prone to elongated time in this muted country. It is difficult to pivot the skill of combing the seafloor of what it is to be alive for orphaned trinkets of insight into anything appraisable. Without a clear connection to production, those with contemplative inclinations are not only dismissed, but are punished for their gifts. By exiling our interiorly bravest citizens, we starve ourselves of meaning, of clarity, and of the aid required when the commonplace tragedies of life enter unannounced.
This is no world for gentle people,
wrote Yasunari Kawabata. And he was correct. Still, the person of depth must resist, must not debase themselves, must not allow gentleness to be stripped from them. Human beings project a charade that loneliness doesn't touch, doesn't permeate bone, doesn't keep us up at night. Our spouse asleep beside, our babies dreaming away, while we stare into a screen, wondering why we are stranded. I thought the job would fix it, the car, the home, vacation, top floor. Then the alarm sounds, and it's off to the office, the gym, the bar, the game, knowing our patient devil will return soon enough, always with the same unanswerable questions. Loneliness is still time spent with the world, says poet Ocean Vuong. Swaths of calendar cubes that bequeath substantial wisdom. To know what sinks to the bottom of every human heart is to know that we are attached by, not despite, our separation. To ask internal questions is to know that there is just as much to learn within the borders of ourselves as there is through a silicon chip, and that the lives of others are valued in tandem with how much we value our own. Longing cannot be removed by scraping. Rather, we must probe as deeply as we can until aloneness obliterates itself with the knowledge that we are each tree, leaf, petal, drop of water. Dear listener, I urge you to ponder your singularities, to not ignore them, but instead to welcome them into your life, to sit with them, to collect what hisses from blue lips and inspect the colander for what is solid, and to share what you uncover. I am aware I quote too much, but words stick to me, so I will close with a final phrase. Black, lesbian, mother, warrior, poet Audre Lorde wrote that,
personal salvation is never just personal.
By understanding ourselves, we join in weighting humanity towards love. I don't know how to change the world, or how to alter its brutal dismissal of what falls outside the all-encompassing grip of commodification. But I believe in my capacity to change myself. And by doing so, it is possible I can encourage you to do the same. And by doing so, it is possible you can encourage someone else to do the same, ad infinitum, until only what is gentle remains. If you made it this far, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your life to engage with this creation. I hope you found something meaningful in the episode. Intimacy and Imitation is a podcast created by me, Marshall Jacklin. You can learn more about the show and my other work by visiting my website, www.marshallJacklin.com, or by following me on social media @MarshallJacklin. The next installment will be released in 2 months. Thank you for listening, and see you soon.